We're just going to get rolling here. We'd like to try and get everybody out by 9 a.m. so you can all get to work on time. So welcome and thanks for getting up super early this morning and being here. My name is Michael Ferreira. I'm the managing principal of Urban Analytics. We're a market research and advisory firm, and we specialize in the new multifamily home market, both here in Calgary and Edmonton, as well as in Vancouver. Usually when I do these things and we're out of town, in the past, I've been able to brag about certain things like how much better the Canucks are doing than the Flames. Can't do that this year, probably not for many years. I can usually brag about how much better our weather is. I can't do that because it's rained for 21 straight days in Vancouver up until this last weekend. So I know you've had some bad weather. We've had a whole different kind of bad weather. So we're all in the same boat. But nevertheless, we're extremely happy to be here. I also want to assure everyone here that while myself and my business partner, John Van Est, are based in Vancouver, we are fully supportive of your NDP government's response to our NDP government's attempts to frustrate the Kinder Morgan pipeline expansion. So I just want to be upfront with that. We have some gifts of wine for our guest panelists, and I can assure you it's not BC wine. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. So enough about politics. We're here today to chat about the housing market, specifically the new multifamily home housing sector in Calgary, and we'll also touch on Edmonton. And so here's how we're just going to roll things out this morning. We're going to have our senior market analyst here in Calgary, Kimberly Poffenroth. She's going to give you an overview of what's been happening in the condo and townhome development sector over the past year or so, and how she sees things moving forward. Jane McKay, who works with Kim here in Calgary, is going to touch on the rental market in Calgary, which we've been tracking for the last year and a half or so. And then we also have Annalise Boytink, our analyst in Edmonton, who's here and is going to give you some insight into what's happening there, because I know there's firms that do business in both markets. So they'll touch on both markets this morning, and you'll hear how both are doing. Before inviting Kim up to start on her presentation, I want to invite my business partner, John Van Est. He's a principal in Urban Analytics, just to give you a bit of an insight into why we're in Calgary and why we're excited about being in Calgary for a long time to come. So, John?
Thanks, Michael, and thanks so much for coming here today. I really appreciate it. We're really happy to do business here, and I just want to quickly give, as Michael noted, I just want to give a quick, just an overview, just a really brief macro overview of why, in spite of recent kind of slowdown in market activity, why we're extremely bullish in the long term on the prospects of real estate in both Calgary and Edmonton. And not necessarily micro information, just more macro trends and things we're seeing that we think are good indicators. It wouldn't be a market presentation without showing the price of oil. So I'll do this once here for my blurb. But ultimately, what we did here is we put together the change in population in Alberta with the price of crude oil. What we're most optimistic about this is that, traditionally you would assume that in the event of a severe decline in the price of oil and a sustained decline, that would result in people not wanting to come to the province to work, to live, and so on. However, we've seen three consecutive years of sustained lower oil prices, and the result of that has been continued population increase. Since 2014, I believe we've had an additional 170,000 people move to the province. So, those people are looking for homes in spite of their propensity to pay for homes, they're still looking to live in a home. And I think this is a big turning point for Alberta, which could suggest that it doesn't necessarily need to rely on the price of oil to attract people to move here anymore. And we think that could be that way going forward. Another thing that we just took a look at was the United Nations did a report of the world cities in 2016. One of the key trends of this report was to note that the population of the world is increasing, and the population of the world is moving to cities. The latest report showed that 600 million people will be moving to cities in addition over the next 14 years. So we're seeing a lot of people moving to cities, we're seeing a lot of people moving around, and populations are looking for stable places in the world to live. The UA take on Calgary. So you guys may have seen in the news, we see it as well too. Vancouver, Toronto, and Calgary have all been named as the top 5 most livable cities in the world by The Economist. These are ranked based on healthcare, education, culture, and stability. I think that's the most important thing, is that sometimes we tend to compare what is Vancouver relative to Calgary, or what is Toronto relative to Montreal, but we don't kind of fail to forget that there's 512 cities on the planet that have more than 1 million people, and all of these Canadian cities are ranked in the 99th percentile. So we see a lot of people wanting to move to Canada, and specifically our major cities. I just want to take a look at average benchmark prices for significant Canadian cities. We've taken a look at Metro Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, and Edmonton, and it's pretty pronounced in terms of what's been going on in the Vancouver and Toronto markets. The benchmark price for a single family home in the Greater Vancouver region is $1.7 million. The average benchmark price in Calgary is just under 1/3 of the price of a benchmark home in Vancouver. You go down to the townhome sector, Vancouver price is double that of Calgary, and in the condominium sector, the price of a condominium in Greater Vancouver is also 3 times roughly that of the average price of a condominium in Edmonton or Calgary. So what's happening right now is that people are moving to Canada, they're moving to big cities, but you even have people who are living in these cities like Vancouver and Toronto, born and raised. They're looking to purchase real estate, establish roots, raise families, and they're going to have a tough time doing that in Vancouver. They're going to be forced with a decision to either rent or move elsewhere. And basically the point of putting this chart up is to suggest, don't be surprised if you're going to continue to see an influx of people into the province from Metro Vancouver, Toronto, other parts of Canada, seeking home ownership opportunities. We've got this. So I just wanted to really quickly talk about the products that Urban Analytics that we do. Our business works twofold. One is a data product, NHS Live. So essentially it's a product that tracks information on the new home market pertaining to multifamily residential units. This is a map of both markets, Calgary and Edmonton, that we track all of the actively selling projects in those 2 markets. So we have, in Calgary and Edmonton, we have 17 submarkets that we track, over 280 actively selling projects representing 26,000 units are in those markets. A lot of activity going on. We also recently started tracking the newer purpose-built rental market as well too. So a lot of activity happening in that sector of the market. We're currently tracking over 80 projects representing just over 16,000 units, and that number is anticipated to grow as well too in the years ahead. We also in Vancouver are about to launch a land platform, of which if you're looking for new data with regards to land, you can get that, and we're also heavily involved in the consulting side. So if you have a project that you're looking to get a highest and best use analysis with regards to unit mix, pricing recommendations, buyer profiles, you can come to us as well too for help on that. I'm just going to introduce Kim Poffenroth, our senior market analyst. She's going to give you a rundown of all the new multifamily activity in Calgary.
So I'm going to start out today by talking about Calgary's new home multifamily market. So as many of you know, Calgary's new home multifamily market has gone through some ups and downs over the past couple of years. With the drop in oil prices, we did see significant job losses as well, which led to some uncertainty in Calgary's multifamily market. Investors started to sit on the sidelines. The resale market did take a bit of a hit, and standing inventory levels increased. Although based on our quarterly tours that we do on a frequent basis and visiting all of the new home multifamily projects, we are starting to see a shift out of the downturn, and I'm going to go over why that is and the specific numbers here. I just wanted to mention as well, when you came in today, you should have got USB sticks. If you didn't, make sure to grab them on the way out. Those will have our presentation slides on them and a little bit more information on us. So, 3,203. That's the total number of sales we saw in 2017. While it doesn't quite compare to the successes that we saw in 2014, it is still a 36% increase in sales compared to 2016. So when we break it down quarter by quarter, we did see a 29% increase in sales in the fourth quarter of the year compared to the third quarter of the year. Year over year, that fourth quarter saw a 69% increase of sales. This increase in sales could be a result of the developers and home builders in Calgary responding to current market conditions. So, especially in the past quarter, we did see some aggressive new incentives being launched, which helped increase sales. Some of these incentives ranged from significant price drops to paid condo fees for a year. There was even some projects that offered guaranteeing a tenant if someone was to buy a property as an investment purchase. So this helped incentivize people to return to the multifamily market. We also saw 17 new project launches in the fourth quarter of 2017, which were targeted primarily at the price-sensitive buyers, helping attract them back in. What this is showing is because we're starting to see a return of purchasers, that people are starting to feel more confident in the economy and their current employment situations. So what product types are selling? This chart here shows you a breakdown of the concrete, wood frame, and townhomes. Concrete, I'm going to go into a little more detail later on in the presentation. The numbers have remained similar over the past while due to the lack of new concrete product launches in Calgary. We do expect the wood frame to increase in sales as there is new allowances now allowing for kind of the 6-story wood frame. So we do expect that to kind of pick up, and we also see a number of new wood frame project launches coming up in the timeline over the next few months and first half of 2018. And townhomes, of course, they will always be a desired place to live, and we expect these to still be a prominent selling product type in Calgary. So when looking at it by submarket, we are seeing a little bit of a case of the inner city versus the outer suburbs. The highest number of sales in the outer north and outer south correlates to the highest number of actively selling projects here. The next couple slides, I'm going to go over the differences between the downtown market, the inner city market, and the outer suburbs. I should mention we do track Airdrie and Cochrane as well for their multifamily projects. So downtown Calgary. There's 15 actively selling projects in downtown Calgary, achieving a blended price per square foot of $620. We've divided our downtown Calgary submarkets into the Eau Claire West Village and Beltline East Village submarkets. So downtown has become seemingly stale. The only project launch in over 2 years in the concrete product type in downtown's market was Citizen Tower, which brought 85 units to market. The remaining downtown projects have a combined 403 available units for purchase, with 156 of these units being standing inventory. I just want to mention that that number is excluding the Myriad and the Orchard, which are on hold at the moment. So out of those 403 units available for purchase, we are seeing a lot of the remaining units in some of these projects being the ones that are harder to sell. So either they're the higher price points, or they might have the less attractive views, or kind of the units that would be difficult to sell even in a hotter market. So we do believe this has created a bit of a pent-up demand in the downtown, as buyers are waiting out their options. They want to see what else is out there, and they're taking time to purchase. Because of this, we do think that there is a bit of a gap that would leave room for a new project launch in the downtown core. As long as it hit the appropriate price point, had effective floor plans, and had a very aggressive marketing campaign that spurred some excitement back into the downtown. So the inner city in Calgary. So I've combined, for the purpose of this presentation, the inner city submarkets being the inner northeast and northwest, and the inner southeast and southwest. There's 11 actively selling concrete projects in the inner city in Calgary, achieving a blended price per square foot of $544. There's 22 actively selling wood frame projects in the inner city, achieving a blended price per square foot of $472, and the townhomes in the inner city submarkets are achieving a blended price per square foot of $400. Now, the inner city is interesting. We do find projects in the inner city that are close to walkable amenities or transportation hubs. They typically have the highest absorptions. We also find people in the inner city are often looking first for their location that they want to live in, and then are deciding on the product type that's available within that location. It's a little bit different than the outer submarkets, where it's a mixture of both playing into buyers' decisions. And of course, the outer suburbs, so the outer north and outer south. The outer suburbs consistently have the highest number of sales. This is reflective of the 87 actively selling projects in the outer north and outer south combined. The outer north and outer south are typically driven by price-sensitive buyers. They tend to be the dominant buyer type in these outer submarkets. So what we do find in the outer submarkets is that we're also seeing the purchasers are kind of loyal to the locations that they know. So for example, first-time home buyers in the outer submarkets, they're often purchasing within or around a community that they may be familiar with, possibly grew up in. We're also seeing the downsizers in the outer submarkets are also purchasing close by to where they may have sold their single-family homes. So there is a bit of loyalty to specific areas in the outer markets. The other thing that's specific about the outer markets is, especially in the outer submarkets, we see distinct demographic groups. So it is important for projects in the outer south and outer north in the marketing campaigns to really target your demographic group that you're trying to market a project for specific to the area, as we are seeing factors play a part in project launches out there. For example, there's certain areas in the outer north where the feng shui of a project is quite important, where that may not be as crucial in an area maybe out in the Walden Legacy communities. So really understanding the demographic groups that are purchasing in that project do make a big difference. So of course, Calgary's gone through some changes. I'm going to first touch on some of the buyer mentality changes that we are seeing. One of the questions that we do ask every time we visit projects is who's buying, what's kind of the sense of who's buying, what type of people are purchasing, what are they looking for, what might be factors to them not deciding to purchase in that project. So 4 of the common buyers that we see in the multifamily product type in Calgary are the young professionals or first-time home buyers, the downsizers, the investors, and restarts. Starting with the young professionals or first-time home buyers. This is an interesting group where we have seen a little bit of a shift in the buyer mentality. We're still seeing first-time home buyers purchasing frequently in the outer submarkets. In the inner city, they are still purchasing, but we're also seeing a bit of a shift for young professionals going towards renting. Jane's going to speak on the rental market following their presentation here. But this leads us to believe that one of the big drivers of this is price point. It could be that it's not quite affordable initially to start out purchasing, which is leading to young professionals, particularly ones in the downtown core, to begin kind of their first steps in their career by renting prior to jumping in and buying in that category. That's still to say first-time homebuyers are active out there, especially in multifamily. The downsizers, this mentality, we are finding the downsizers are just taking a little bit more time to purchase, so they're weighing their options. Factors that are important to the downsizer market are a little bit higher end finishings and high emphasis on storage space and parking. And investors, this is an interesting one because we did see investors sit on the sidelines for the majority of 2016 and the first part of 2017. And we started to see them return kind of later on in 2017, particularly at projects that were close to large employment hubs. Some of these projects included Seton Park Place, right near the South Calgary Hospital, Noble in the University District, Park Point, Quolix Landmarks project downtown. So projects that would have those steady employment hubs are kind of the ones that we're seeing investors more active in right now. And of course, the restarts will always be a prominent buyer type in the multifamily product type, often having emphasis on a little bit more space, an extra den, room, etc. Now, one of the other categories that we're going to keep a close eye on is going to be families in multifamily projects. Of course, townhomes do see family buyers, but we are starting to see some projects try to incentivize families living in wood frame condominium or concrete condominium product types. So we're seeing a few projects come up to market where they have 3 and 4 bedroom floor plans. The Gateway in West District's an example of one of these projects. This is something we're going to keep a close eye on over the next year to see if that's kind of a trend that starts to take off a little bit more in the wood frame and concrete condominium product types. And of course, when we talk about changes, we have to talk about the increasing levels of standing inventory. It did hit its peak in the second quarter of the year and has gone down a little bit the last 2 quarters. We actually expect this number to go down slightly over the next couple quarters based on the number of projects that we see completing in the next few months, first half of the year. So standing inventory, is what we're seeing with the standing inventories, these decreasing levels. We are seeing the units being absorbed. The other trend that we're seeing is some of the developers, particularly Lakai Group and Brad Lamb, are converting some of their remaining standing inventory units to rental units, which is actually reducing the number of standing inventory units on the market here as well. And then there are some pretty good incentives on standing inventory units out there too, so it might be a good chance if you're out there shopping for a unit. And of course, we also saw some challenges introduced into the multifamily market. The first being the stress test, and the second being the rising interest rates. Both of these introductions made it harder for the first-time home buyers as it reduced their purchasing power on the market. We're going to touch a bit more on this in our panel discussion later on. And for Calgary's market, I'd like to talk about some of the opportunities that we see out here. The first being in downtown Calgary. So, as I mentioned before, we do see room for a new project launch in the downtown Calgary market. Just a hint to any of the developers sitting out here in the room. We do feel that there is a little bit of a pent-up demand, but we also see some changes in the downtown Calgary market. So we are seeing, for example, the Victoria Park redevelopment plan could be a potential for that room. And then it's hard to talk about downtown Calgary without mentioning the talk of all the Flames, a new Flames arena. I think it's easy for a lot of us here in the room to agree that would be a benefit for the city. We'll see what happens with that. But if you just take a look at Edmonton's market and what the new arena brought to the Edmonton downtown core, you can see that it really brought a vibrancy and excitement to the inner city, and that would be a benefit. Of course, that's something we're going to have to just keep our eye on and follow the news and see what ends up happening with the political powers in Calgary right now. Another thing we'd like to keep an eye on over the next couple years is the master plan communities that we see coming up. Some of these include the University District, Westman Village, West District, the Currie Barracks, and more to name. We do think that these master plan communities out there will continue to be desirable places to live, as they offer that community feel, they offer the walkable amenities, a safe environment, the pedestrian-friendly atmosphere that many people are looking for that they may not find in kind of the already developed communities, and they allow this option to age in place. Let's take University District for an example again, where they're launching a range of townhomes, wood frame condominiums, independent living was just announced there. So it is providing that full range of living options that allows you to kind of create a place, a home. So the master plan communities are something that we want to follow quite closely, and we do expect them to have high absorptions in the upcoming years. And of course, other reasons we want to stay positive about Calgary's multifamily market right now. It is ranked the 5th most livable city in the world. We do have a highly educated and skilled workforce. We also have established education and healthcare institutions. It's a safe environment with close access to the mountains, which we all love, and it is North America's sunniest city. So we do still think that Calgary is a good place for both locals to be purchasing in the multifamily market, as well as investors, and we do expect that investor base to grow in Calgary's market in the upcoming years. Thank you, and I'm going to pass the mic on to Jane Mackay, who's going to talk about the highly discussed Calgary rental market right now.
So, I am going to first provide a bit of background on how we started tracking the purpose-built rental market in Calgary, then talk about some trends and figures, and then finish off with a forward-looking summary. So it all started in the fall of 2016, where we began tracking Calgary's purpose-built rental market. And it started with us making personal visits to newer purpose-built rental projects in Calgary and Airdrie to really get a boots-on-the-ground sense of what was happening in the market. We focused on tracking projects that had 15 units or more and that had been built in the last 5 years and newer, just because this type of information was most relevant to industry stakeholders interested in our data. From here, we were able to gather a lot of information on rental rates, incentives, unit finishing standards, and ask leasing staff questions like, is this project pet friendly, and do you have in-suite laundry? And then from there, the real work began when we consolidated all of the information into our database, NHS Live. There were some long days of inputting projects in the system, but we got through it. And in March of 2017, we launched our purpose-built rental data platform on NHS Live. We are excited to say that we are currently tracking 35 actively leasing and fully leased projects, totaling over 5,000 units, as well as 33 contemplated projects. So the green circles and squares that you see on the screen represent the active projects, with the red being fully leased, and then the blue being contemplated, of course. So we do conduct monthly updates of our rental platform. So we are updating trends in inventory, what available units are coming to market, rental rate changes, and incentive changes as well. Our contemplated projects are updated on a weekly basis. So March of 2017 was not only an exciting time just because we had just launched our rental data platform, but because Calgary's rental market was definitely heating up. So at this time, there were 6 projects in the downtown market, which were all located in the Beltline, that were 51% leased in March of 2017. As of January 2018, these same 6 projects are 96% leased. Now, this was right at the time that Versus had just launched, bringing 444 new units to the market. But there was clearly a need for this significant amount of inventory to enter the market because of the high rate of leases. Low-rise wood frame condominiums have held their own as well in the market. We saw a 9% decrease in vacancy between the period of July 2017 and January 2018. Low-rise wood frame condominiums are very interesting to track in terms of the rental market, just because the rent per square foot varies so significantly depending on what submarket you are looking at. So we are tracking projects in the inner city that are renting for $2.30 per square foot, and then projects in the outer markets that are renting for $1.40 per square foot. So this map should help show what is happening in Calgary's rental market in terms of a per square foot basis. So I want to mention that these figures are net rent due to the fact that most projects in Calgary and Airdrie are offering free monthly rent incentives, so we factor them into these averages. And before I go into specific submarkets, I do want to provide a baseline for Calgary as a whole. On average, your typical unit in a new purpose-built rental will rent for $1,400 and is 773 square feet in size. On average, your typical submarket in Calgary on a weighted average basis is achieving 15 units of absorption per month. So now I want to touch on 3 submarkets in particular, with the first one being the Outer North submarket. And the Outer North does have the lowest average net rent in Calgary. We are seeing a range of renters renting here, anywhere from downsizers to young professionals and singles to new families to Canada. This market is currently achieving absorptions of 12 units a month. Next, I want to touch on the Inner Northwest market. The Inner Northwest has the second highest average net rent in Calgary, just behind the downtown market. And interestingly, this market has the smallest average unit size in the city. The average unit here is 630 square feet. Lastly, I want to touch on the Outer South market. And we see the potential for a new purpose-built rental project to launch here. Somewhere close to the South Campus Hospital would be ideal to really cater towards that hospital employee demographic, maybe offering some flexible term leases and some furnished units would be a great option here as well. So with all these net rent figures, absorptions, and rental rates in mind, why are renters choosing to rent in Calgary? So I first want to give you a snapshot of what's happening in terms of trends. And first and foremost, amenities. So many of you probably know amenities are an important product offering in today's market. A great example of a project that has launched that really has set a new standard of amenities is One Properties Versus. Versus offers a demo kitchen, media lounge, games room, fitness facilities, a yoga room, and the project even holds tenant community dinners and group fitness classes as well. Versus saw average monthly absorptions of 30 units per month. To put this in context, your average downtown project has seen monthly absorptions of 18 units. Now, according to the National Apartment Association study, it was concluded that these community-based amenities garner higher rent increases than unit-specific upgrades. So it just really demonstrates that renters out there today are looking for these amenities. Next, we have pet-friendly options, and these are very important to today's renter. If a renter has a pet and a project simply doesn't offer pet-friendly leases, a renter will just simply look towards the next project. And then we have parking, and of course, parking is a hot topic in Calgary overall, and it definitely does not differ in the purpose-built rental market either. So in the outer markets, we are seeing that projects are typically including a underground parking stall and rent, and there's opportunity to rent additional outdoor stalls anywhere from $25 to $50 a month. Things do take a bit of a turn when we look towards the inner markets, and it's been interesting to see how projects have adapted to these challenges. So in the inner markets, we are typically seeing underground parking stalls, the first stall renting for $150 a month, and then any additional underground stall renting for $300, just to really disincentivize renters from going towards that two-car situation. Additionally, projects have also offered incentives such as car-to-go mileage to really incentivize renters towards going carless. However, during our project visits, we have continued to notice that it is so much easier to ask people in a couple, for example, in a two-car situation to go down to having one car than to ask a single person to go from having one car to no car. And last but not least, we have incentives, and incentives are a very important product offering in today's market. Renters are expecting them, and projects have adapted to this reality. So we are seeing projects offer anywhere from 1 to 3 months of free rent on 12 to 18-month leases, as well as reduced security deposits, move-in bonuses, and free internet and cable packages for a year. Interestingly, fully leased projects are still offering incentives. Out of the 25 fully leased projects we have in our database, only 4 are currently not offering incentives. So what does all this mean looking forward? Well, as of January 2018, Calgary's purpose-built rental market is 90% leased. We do expect vacancy to continue to decrease as there's a bit of a lull in supply coming onto the market in the next year. 2019 and 2020 will bring more of a flux in supply to the market as new projects are launching, such as Westbank's TELUS Sky, the Residence Inn by Marriott, Sidex's East and West Village Towers, as well as up-and-coming projects in the University District. During this time frame, we do expect approximately 2,300 new units to come to market. With that said, and based on how positively Calgary's rental market has performed since we started tracking it, we do believe that projects in ideal locations close to employment centers that are offering some sort of combination of amenities, incentives, pet-friendly options, and parking will continue to do well. In the next couple years, it will be important for projects to implement aggressive marketing campaigns to really stand out to those renters in the marketplace. We are really excited to continue tracking Calgary's purpose-built rental market. We're excited to see it grow and are looking forward to the new ideas that come with each and every new project. And with that, I would like to pass it on to my colleague Annalise Boytig, who will be giving an overview of Edmonton's market. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annalise, and I am Urban Analytics' Edmonton-based analyst. I'm here to give you a brief overview of Edmonton's multifamily and purpose-built rental markets. So Urban Analytics started tracking Edmonton back in summer 2016, and I was brought on in spring 2017 as boots on the ground for Edmonton. We are currently tracking over 115 multifamily projects in Edmonton, and we saw over 30 new project launches occur in 2017. We're expecting a strong 2018 in Edmonton's multifamily market. So let's take a look back at what happened in 2017. So 2017 was a strong year in Edmonton's multifamily market, especially in the fourth quarter of the year. There was a 74% increase in sales in the fourth quarter of the year compared to the third quarter of the year. Now, as you can see this large increase right here, a good portion of that the sales is from the launch of Sky Residences and the success of the ICE District. We saw a 113% increase in sales in the fourth quarter compared to the first quarter of the year, and on a year-over-year basis, we saw a 137% increase in sales. So now let's take a look at these sales broken down by product type. When looking at a year-over-year basis, all 3 product forms had increases in sales. Now, the largest increase was in the concrete condominium sector, where sales increased by nearly 5 times the amount. Again, this is due to the success of the ICE district. When developers are looking to place new concrete product in Edmonton's downtown, they must be aware of the draw of the ICE district and how they can compete against it. Next up is wood frame condominiums, and they increased at a nearly 99% increase, and townhome sales increased by 56%. Now, the townhome product class has the most competition in Edmonton. There are over 60 actively selling townhomes in Edmonton. The lowest amount of competition is in the concrete condominium sector, with just under 20 actively selling projects. Now, speaking about competition, let's take a look at some of the hot areas in Edmonton right now. First hot area we'll take a look at is the Southwest. So the Southwest is the highest competition area in Edmonton, with over 40 actively selling projects. A few of the most popular neighborhoods in the Southwest include Windermere, Ambleside, Keswick, and Rutherford. Now, the Southwest is one of the few submarkets in Edmonton, besides downtown, that's actively selling concrete condominiums. The average concrete condominium in the Southwest is selling at a blended average price per square foot of $375. Now, wood frame condominiums and townhomes are much more popular in the Southwest, and they're selling at a blended average price per square foot of $273 and $238 respectively. Now, we're seeing entry-level buyers being the main purchaser in the Southwest. They're really drawn to that affordable product type. And then let's take a look at sales by product type in the Southwest. So on a year-over-year basis, there were 45 concrete sales, 252 wood frame sales, and coming in at the highest was townhomes with 319 sales. Again, these entry-level buyers are really drawn to the townhomes. They really like the affordable product and how the townhomes have room to grow. Now, townhomes in the Southwest don't have it easy. There are over 25 actively selling townhomes in the Southwest alone. One of the largest projects is Vista Point by Brookfield Residential. It's a 173-unit townhome project that's selling at a blended price per square foot of $228. Taking a look at another hot area is Edmonton's downtown. And this is a really talked about area in Edmonton right now. Concrete projects are big right now in Edmonton. And in Edmonton, we've kind of separated our downtown into 2 different areas. We have the downtown core, which features the ICE district, and then we have auxiliary areas, including Strathcona and Oliver. So concrete towers in Edmonton right now, in the downtown core, are selling at an average blended price per square foot of $643. And we see a slightly lower rate in the Strathcona area at $582. Now, who's purchasing at these concrete towers? Well, we're seeing a variety of purchasers. We're seeing anyone from a wealthier downsizer to an established professional to an investor. Now, we see less of a family interest in these concrete towers, but this may change with some new zoning laws that Edmonton's looking to introduce, which allows developers to build taller buildings if more family-friendly units are included. So, an example would be a 3-bedroom or a 3+ den, and we'll touch on that in a bit later. This is an interesting slide looking at the change the ICE district has made to Edmonton. So looking at the October 2013 slide, you really can see that Edmonton used to be a sea of parking lots. But taking a look at the April 2017 photo, you can see the large change that the ICE district has made. Looking left to right, the buildings are first the Stantec Tower, which includes Sky Residences. In the middle is the JW Marriott, which includes the Legis Residences. And on the right is Edmonton Tower, which is an office building. And what you really don't notice in that photo is tucked behind those brand new buildings is the Rogers Place. So this is a good photo really showing the difference the ICE district has made for Edmonton. Now, looking forward in Edmonton's multifamily market, we see continued interest in Edmonton's downtown. Projects such as the ICE District Phase 2, to Regency's Emerald Tower, to Alder's 80-story tall tower continue to capture the interest of Edmontonians. A few of the considerations we see looking forward are parking, pedestrians, and families. Parking is a concern for Edmontonians. They really rely on cars to bring them to their needs. Now, the ICE district tries to mitigate these concerns by really promoting their connectivity, by incorporating pedways and transit into their design, so residents are less reliant on their cars. Now, being pedestrian friendly is an ongoing task for the city of Edmonton and really relates to those concerns for parking. If Edmonton can be more pedestrian friendly, then we need less of those really expensive parking stalls in those downtown buildings. And lastly, I mentioned that there might be some more families coming to the downtown market. Developers have to be aware of how those families will affect the residences in buildings, and if they're going to create amenities to meet the needs of those families. So switching gears a bit right now, we're going to take a look at Edmonton's purpose-built rental market. So the purpose-built rental platform is Edmonton's newest addition. We launched in August 2017. We are currently tracking 86 projects, including contemplated projects, and we're tracking buildings that were built in 2012 or newer. So taking a quick look at the map, you really can see where the newer purpose-built rental projects are located in Edmonton. And you're seeing two kind of zones here. You're seeing the inner downtown projects and then the outer projects, which follow the Anthony Henday. Now, as my colleague Jane mentioned, the colors here represent green's an active project in its initial leasing campaign, red's a fully leased project, and blue is a contemplated project. Quickly looking at a few of the rental trends, like Calgary, amenities are important. A renter will choose to live in a building with amenities and pay higher rent for it. A few of the more popular amenities we see are fitness centers, yoga studios, kitchens, and social rooms, really places that bring people together. Next up is being pet friendly. It's also very important. According to a study done by the National Apartment Association, pet-friendly amenities offer the greatest impact for rent increases and cost relatively little to implement, so they're the greatest bang for your buck. A few pet-friendly amenities are pet spas, indoor dog runs, and off-leash dog parks. Now, incentives. We see less incentives in Edmonton than we do in Calgary. We're typically seeing 1 month free in the initial lease-up phase, and then discounted rental rates when units come back onto the market. Now, looking at those two rental zones I mentioned previously. So the first is the outer Anthony Henday projects. These projects are typically 4-story wood frame buildings, have anywhere from 39 to 500 plus units within multiple buildings. These projects are pretty much fully leased and are renting at an average blended rent per square foot of 1.51. Now, these projects offer few amenities, if any. The most common amenity you will see is a fitness center. Now, that's pretty much the opposite compared to the downtown projects. The downtown projects are typically high-rise concrete buildings, and they offer plenty of amenities. Here's where you'll see those social rooms, those kitchens, those rooftop lounges. And these are renting at a higher blended rent per square foot at $207. Now, proportionally, there are more active projects in the downtown market than there are in the outer market. And we have seen a few big name launches happen in the past few years, including the Mayfair and the Hendricks. And we have seen continued interest in Edmonton's downtown, with Sidex announcing their new rental project in Edmonton's downtown core, and a few new rental projects in the Strathcona neighborhood as well, including Raymond Block and South Park on White. Now, looking forward in Edmonton's rental market, we see renting over buying being a continued trend for the younger generation. Renting offers them more flexibility. There's no down payments, you can move, and you have those amenities that you crave without paying those large condo fees. Now again, amenities are important. It's what's going to set you apart. Your renters will choose to rent in your building and pay higher rents for buildings with amenities. And lastly, looking forward, we're interested in office conversions. So a good example in Edmonton is Harley Court. It's a 12-story building with around 150,000 square feet in office space that's being converted into 177 rental suites. So we're interested to see if this trend will take off and the challenges and opportunities had with this project. And that's all I got for you. So now I'm going to pass you back to Mike to get us set up for our Q&A panel. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I think another round of applause for all three of them. That was a lot of information condensed into a short period of time. We're now going to ask the Kim, Jane, and Annalise to come back up onto the stage, and we're also going to welcome a couple of guest panelists that we have for a little Q&A session. Harvey and Bob, if you can make your way up to the stage here, and ladies, come on up. And if we can get a couple of handheld mics for Harvey and Bob as well. But if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask themselves, don't hesitate to put your hand up and ask away. So first I want to introduce Bob Yarish. He's sitting right there with his hand up. Bob's currently the regional sales manager for TD's mortgage specialist team here in Calgary, which consists of 80 mortgage specialists in Calgary. Bob's held a variety of roles in his 20 years with TD, including a 13-year stint on Vancouver Island and a 2-year period commuting via float plane to lead the finance and operations team in Vancouver. So there's days when that would be really great, And having experienced a very windy day on one of those floatplanes, there's days when it's really not very pleasant. So kudos to you. Bob also spends a lot of time giving back. He became a board member with Kids Cancer Care Foundation in Calgary after his daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor at the age of 5. She's now healthy, a very healthy 9.5-year-old. And he's also actively involved with the Make-A-Wish Foundation and Ronald McDonald House. And he has somehow found the time to complete 3 Ironmans. We thought it'd be great to have Bob here today in light of some of the mortgage rule changes that we've seen in recent months, as well as the recent increases that, in interest rates that we've seen implemented as well. We're also happy to welcome to the stage Harvey Russell. Harvey is the Vice President of Multifamily and Land for CBRE here in Calgary. I'm sure he needs little introduction to many of you in this room. That was a title he earned after just 2 years after joining CBRE in 1993. He's since gone on to build a successful brokerage, utilizing his many strong relationships in Calgary and far beyond, as well as a strong emphasis on market research, which of course we love. Harvey was also a principal of a large development company for several years, where his responsibilities included site acquisitions, the approvals process, marketing, budgeting, and construction management. So he was getting pretty busy. The $1 billion of real estate trades he transacted in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan over a 14-year period, and the countless multifamily residential properties he sold in Calgary and Edmonton makes it no wonder he's been recognized multiple times as one of CBRE's top brokers, both in Alberta and nationally. Harvey's been a tremendous asset to our team here in Calgary over the past couple of years, provides valuable knowledge into all aspects of the market. He was a natural choice to invite here today to share some of his thoughts on how the land market is transforming here. Since we ended with Bob, or with Harvey, we'll start with Harvey. So Harvey, just with respect to the land market, how would you describe the state of the market today compared to, say, a year or even 2 years ago?
I think the statistics bear out here that there's an improvement starting to happen, and developers, they got their finger on the pulse pretty readily in their sales centers. So I think everybody's starting to see a little more activity. The economic forecast looking better, oil prices, et cetera, et cetera. So however, I definitely see caution. So, we've been through some rough times, and so I think developers are going forward optimistically but cautiously.
Have you noticed a change in terms of who's inquiring about land in Calgary, where they're from, any new players that we're seeing in the market?
I'd say for the most part of the transactions being completed, it's longer term Calgary developers that I call filling up their pipeline. So, so that could be looking at a year or 2 or 5, and so a good number of the more established developers have, even in a down market, are churning over a certain amount of product, and so they got to keep adding to their inventory of lands. And so I think the main state Calgary developers are continuing to do that. I see the significant drop off in demand from other markets. Toronto and Vancouver have been the dominant other markets interested in Calgary, and they have. There's still a few people looking, and I'm talking to these groups on a regular basis, and they've all have significant challenges in their own markets that they're concerned about. However, they seem to more concentrate in their own markets, and they'll talk about Calgary. I was in Vancouver in early December, and I sent out about 25 emails, and I'm coming out to Vancouver, and if you want to meet and talk about land, give me a call. And immediately I had about 15 people come over and talk to me. So I always joke with them that I've been coming to Vancouver for 25 years, and you know, I've talked to endless number of people in that time, and what I look for is the guy that talks, but he also gets on a plane. And so out of the 15 people I talked about in early December, I don't think I've had one get on a plane and come out here. So I think over time, as you know, things start to look better and better in Alberta, there's going to be the Toronto and Vancouver guys will start coming back.
Bob, grab the mic there. So Kim referenced some potential challenges, some headwinds that we're seeing in the market today, mostly with respect to the new stress test rule that OFSI introduced and implemented at the start of this year. Can you maybe explain a little bit about what impact that has on potential buyers' buying power in the market today?
Sure. Well, I think it threw everybody for a bit of a flurry, banks included, because we scrambled in December to figure out, you know, the impact of all these changes and what would happen. So I think what we saw, you know, is typically the end of the year, we're not as busy from a transaction standpoint and looking at underwriting new deals, but it threw a flurry of, you know, pre-approvals into the mix and people wanting to sort of hedge their bets who were considering looking, but it might push their time frame up a bit quicker to hold the rate before January 1st to get that process in place so they'd be qualified under the old rules. But I think what the stress test did primarily is impact more of the conventional buyer. And really the impact I think that has to somebody is it reduces their buying power by about 15 to 20%. So, you know, take a client, a customer who's looking to buy a $400,000 property, it can really diminish what that potential buying power has done. So I think coupled with interest rate increases, which we've seen over the last little while, add the stress test on top of this, you know, I think what we've found is that we have a huge amount of pre-approved buyers in our pipeline today. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if those buyers turn into, or pre-approvals turn into buyers come spring. But I think the other thing that's been, you know, interesting to watch is, you know, the need for some of these folks who do not want to change their expectations of what they want to buy, but the necessity to actually add a potential family member on to help qualify now under some of these rule changes. So it feels like most of this is anecdotal feedback right now. I mean, it's been too early, I think, for us to detect exact trends and what it's looking like. I would say overall that, you know, to start the first quarter for us this year in Calgary, you know, we are significantly ahead from an approval standpoint, both in terms of dollars and call it widgets or mortgages or pre-approved deals. But it impacts a small portion of buyers, in my personal view, because anybody who is less than 20% down, or historically anybody who wanted something less than a 5-year term for conventional, you were already trying to pre-approve them or qualify them at slightly higher qualifying rates anyway. So we haven't seen a significant change, and my teams would tell you that they've been busier than they anticipated being. Our underwriting team, which for us here is primarily based out of Edmonton, a bit in Markham, Ontario, would tell you they've been tested with some of the busiest days they've had in the last number of years, which is really actually a good test for us that we're actually ready for spring underwriting. So I think we're less concerned. Some of the news recently has been around, you know, where buyers are going if they can't get qualified from a bank. It is brokers giving feedback and saying, I'm actually having to take my deal to a variety of lenders now versus one lender who can get that deal approved. There are still a few, obviously, boutique lenders that don't have to qualify under these particular stress test changes, and it's few, you know, non-federally regulated lenders that also don't have to adopt to some of these things. I think places like the Van Cities have applied their own stress test changes, which I'm not intimately familiar with. So the playing field is not perfectly level yet, but I think we anticipate it becoming a more level playing field, you know, as the year progresses.
Right. Interesting. Kim, you referenced in your presentation the limited amount of new high-rise development that we've seen in the downtown and inner city markets in Calgary over the past couple of years. In your opinion, what do you think it would take for a high-rise project launching today in the downtown, in East Village, or in the Beltline to be successful?
Of course. Oh, I am hooked up. Okay. For a downtown project to launch, I think one of the biggest things that developers would need to incorporate is an aggressive marketing campaign to really bring potential buyers into a sales center. We often see, we go out and we visit every project multiple times, and we do find the ones with the best sales centers and the best show suites and the ones that really make it feel like this is what your unit's going to look like tend to be the projects that actually see the highest sales. So putting that emphasis on marketing, putting that emphasis on what the project will look like, what the feel of the project will be, is key to launching a downtown high-rise, and it is something that definitely needs that initial investment in it. I also think a downtown project launch would have to incorporate floor plans and unit mixes that would still be affordable to kind of those first-time home buyers. We do see the higher-end project types out there, but I do think there's a little bit of a market that has a range from the affordable one-bedrooms to the higher-priced penthouses. So just making sure that there's that good range that allows a variety of people to enter the market at will be key. And then of course, hitting the mark on floor plan sizes, on unit breakdowns is also very important to ensure that those units are absorbed in the market.
And I know you've seen some strong investor activity in some of the outer submarkets of recent launches, mostly in the low-rise sector. Do you think the absence of those same investors in the downtown market, is that a function of them not being interested in the downtown market, or of them not having the product that sort of appeals to them being available for them to purchase?
Yeah, so of course we did see high numbers of investors when a lot of the downtown projects initially launched. So, it really has been over 2 years since a downtown project has launched. We typically do find investors are right in there at the beginning of a project launch, and just the lack of new launches is a big reason why we haven't seen those investors very present in the downtown market recently. So really spurring that excitement is a key factor for that. We also do think there's a market for, marketing a project in the big cities, so Vancouver, Toronto, to also bring in a little bit of that foreign investment. I mean, Toronto and Vancouver are trying to put caps on that, so they could come here.
Yeah, there's room.
Yeah.
Before we move on to Jane, are there any questions anybody has? Okay. Don't hesitate to put your hand up and yell if you do have one. Jane, on the rental market, we've seen a significant amount of new purpose-built rental product hit the market over the past 12 to 18 months. And based on your presentation, they've done pretty well in getting leased up. Can you maybe chat a little bit about what has made these projects successful in getting leased up, both from a design and also a marketing perspective?
Sure. So from a renter's perspective, it's really the combination of various factors. So you're getting a new unit, it may or may not have been lived in previously. You're getting fitness facilities, amenities, demo kitchens, places to bring your friends over. You're getting free monthly rental incentives on these projects as well. And it almost seems like a no-brainer for people to say, okay, I'll rent for a year or two, save up some money for a down payment, and then potentially buy in the future when I feel more comfortable, more stable in my employment situation, and put down roots then. But until then, I'll take advantage of the rental market type of thing. So that's when we've seen a lot of young professionals really move into the market, especially in the downtown market.
And with some of the recent big rental project completions over the last year, the rental terms of those tenants are going to be coming up for renewal in the next little while. Have you seen any increases in vacancies as those terms expire, and how are those building owners reacting to those?
Yeah, we have seen some turnover in a couple buildings when they come to their kind of yearly 1-year anniversary. It's really a matter of still providing incentives to those renters to keep them renting. As well, amenities retain renters as well, just because they have kind of a lifestyle going on, go to the gym, have their whole kind of life in their building, which really helps retain renters as well. It is important though for projects to continue offering incentives, and those can be adjusted for projects that may be offered 2 months free rent in initial leasing campaigns. Maybe that's adjusted to 1. So it will be interesting to see as more projects do come to that 1-year anniversary, what will happen in terms of renter turnover.
And Annalise, you chatted a lot about what's happening in the Ice District downtown in Edmonton. Can you maybe speak a little bit more on what some of the biggest factors have been in driving demand for those projects and what's made them successful?
Sure. So I think it's a variety of factors that are really driving people to the Ice District. First would be the buildings. The buildings are incredible. They offer entire floors of amenities. They're completely connected to Rogers Place. There's pedways. There's transit incorporated to designs, something that Edmonton hasn't really seen in a long time. So people are drawn to the buildings. Second, it's the whole atmosphere of the Ice District. You have everything at your fingertips. You have grocery stores. You have entertainment hubs. You have everything you need within a walkable distance, which is something very new for Edmonton. People are really drawn to this new idea of the Ice District.
Harvey, back to you for a second. So you mentioned you chatted with some out-of-town developers about coming into town. They haven't gotten on a plane as of yet. What do you think is preventing them from getting on a plane and coming here and checking the land market out a little bit more closely?
All the Toronto and Vancouver guys, the majority of their businesses are in their own city. That's their primary market. So, all the issues going on in their market, and it's so I was in Toronto for 7 years developing, and I have a good idea of some of the issues in that city. And as an example, Brad Lamb was recently telling me that he's not sure if he's going to buy another site in Toronto because the bureaucracy and the politics is getting so intense. It's just ridiculous. I had another very large Toronto developer in town last week, and they just keep layering on bureaucracy and so they sit in those markets, and they and equally in Vancouver, the big developer out there recently told me that it took 4 years to get a development permit or a building permit. And so they're in those markets, they're enjoying absorptions, but they're also extremely frustrated with all the different issues in their market. Like Vancouver as an example, they're very, very concerned about what the NDP government might do. And so that's kind of the frustration of what the issues in their market have them considering, should we look at another market? And so that's kind of why they're interested, but at the same time, they're busy, and so, I think eventually if they get motivated enough by the negatives that are going on in their markets, then, they'll potentially come back into Calgary. There was a dominant number of those players in Calgary. I was just thinking about back in 14, when you'd get multiple offers on every one of your site offerings, and in a lot of cases, the majority of them were out-of-town guys. So, I think as Calgary or Alberta continue to show progress, that they'll slowly come back.
Have you seen any movement in pricing on land?
No, I'd say remarkably, land values in this cycle have held up incredibly well, and I compare that to 2009. And so one of the constants has been, even though we're in a challenging market, there's always been a certain amount of demand out there. So throughout the last 3 years, you know, you take a site to the market and it'd be more challenging to sell, and demand would be a heck of a lot different than what it used to be. But amazingly enough, values have held up quite well. I would say for A and B product, maybe C not so much, but you know, that's a pretty positive thing that land values have held up as well as they have.
Yeah, and I think we've, ladies would agree that I think we've seen the same thing on the end product side of it as well, outside of some incentives and such happening. I think we've seen prices hold fairly steady across the market. So.
2009 was the same thing, so concrete high-rise basically dropped from 600 a foot to 450. And there was a period of time where the economics were just totally off base, whereas, yeah, it's held up much better this go around.
Yeah. Bob, back to you. So in addition to the stress test rules you referenced, also we've seen some increases in interest rates over the last 4 or 5 months. What impact have those had on the prospective buyers that your group is working with?
You know, I think probably not a significant impact, other than I think they push sometimes the stress test rules now higher than they used to have been. I think people are probably still catching up to the fact that if they've got, you know, floating debt and variable rate mortgages on credit line products, they probably haven't paid that close attention to, you know, monthly rate changes happening. I think the biggest thing it's done is actually probably created a lot more competitiveness back into the market again for us. So I think people are now back being rate sensitive again, where we were in this constant low rate for a long time period. You know, people aren't used to paying over 3% for a 5-year mortgage term anymore. So I think what we found is some of the sort of more monoline lenders have actually, you know, I think we're having to be more competitive than we used to be with some of those lenders before. Because when they were in the low 2s for a 5-year term, you know, people were pretty happy to come to a big bank for this. So I think we're finding now that we've got to get down kind of a lot lower than we used to have been before, so our margins are pretty tight. That's on the selfish side of the bank. I think from a client standpoint, it's still relatively low rate environment compared to what it's been over the last, you know, 10 plus years. You know, I still remember 5-year lending. Well, I'm sure people in this room remember 5-year lending a lot higher than I remember it, but you know, when it was over 5% for a 5-year term. And I think this is what the stress test is trying to ensure people are safe from, is the amount of debt we see amongst, you know, clients at TD. It's certainly growing, not shrinking. But I think that's an industry thing, not just a TD Bank thing. But so far, it hasn't slowed things down yet for us. But January was a busy month with rate changes. The margins still are incredibly tight. I think we all cross our fingers from my team's standpoint, because they certainly like it when, you know, rates are lower, because it's an easier conversation. We hope the spring market, you know, brings that competitiveness back again, where we all seem to shrink back down again from a rate standpoint. I think we do a lot of our business now in a credit line type product, but it's a conventional deal. So I think what that's done is that you can still lock in low mortgage rates, but you're seeing the floating portions of those things go up substantially, but it still gives someone good flexibility in terms of the product offerings that you can provide. Yeah.
And I think the assumption was when, you know, when buyers' buying power gets reduced, that they maybe alter their expectations of what they can buy. Maybe they were looking at a single-family home, and now they're looking at a townhome. Townhome buyers are now maybe looking at condos. Is that what you're seeing out there, or are you also seeing some people perhaps say, okay, I'm not going to buy because I can't afford what I really want, so I'm just going to continue to rent?
Well, I think those right now who wanted to buy are still looking to buy. Who sits on the sidelines? I think we haven't seen that person sort of drop off to this particular stage. I think people's expectations around what they actually can go out there and afford to buy has changed. So what we're hearing from our pre-approved clients is that they are now opening up their options in terms of if they're out there in the market looking. There might have been a particular unit that they might not have looked at before that they are now opening themselves up to. So I think what we've been trying to do is, you know, our team, you know, obviously has lots of, you know, relationships with different builders across the city. So I think what we're actually spending more time doing as a team is to be even more involved in understanding certain projects out there that our clients might not have thought about, that we can help put on their radar. So that's, sometimes bringing prospective clients and builders together, bringing some of the builders to our team to explain some of the projects that they have on the go that might now suit that pre-approved list of clients. Because I'd say in our pipeline today, probably 50% of our active pipeline is pre-approved clients, not necessarily people who made a firm purchase decision and projects that are waiting to fund in the spring or later on this year. So I think it will shift expectations. It feels still a bit too early to know the direct answer, but anecdotally my team would say there's definitely different thought process happening right now.
Some good insight there. Any other questions from the audience before we wrap things up? No hands are going up. Well, I see we're 9 o'clock on the button, so I want to thank our two guest panelists for coming and joining and sharing your insight today. And thank you all again for coming out. We look forward to seeing you at your various projects throughout the year. Thanks. And just a reminder, all those little USB flash drives have today's slide presentation on them. So don't forget to take one if you didn't get one on the way.